Hey guys, it's Ben the Coin Geek. Thanks for joining me today for a U of A women's preview of the conference schedule season. We have a new drinking game just for this. I'll tell you about that in a second. And as always, brought to you by Old Pueblo Coin. If you have any coins, currency, gold, silver items for sale, don't go to the hotel buyers and get ripped off. To come locally, get good treatment, and get free appraisals. Old Pueblo Coin Speedway in Columbus. All right, so the drinking game is this. Every time I say Pac-12 instead of Big 12, you guys take a drink. We're going to take a look at this season here. I think I allotted us for the possibility of 4 losses in the non-conference schedule, and coming out with just with 2 is, I think, really good. Of course, I had no knowledge of the team at that time other than a little tidbits that I've picked up here and there. I'm just going off of my gut, basically, and we're going to do a little bit of that also for this Big 12 season. Now you want me to say Pac-12 so you can have a drink, right? So I had 4 different questions, things to look at as we got out of the non-conference schedule, and that was style of play, who the leaders on the court are, who's a player, and the level of competition. So coming out of that, obviously style of play up-tempo, coach is intense. I like what I see out of the coaching staff in general. Yeah, I mean, I'm actually very positive and optimistic about the future of the program based on what we've seen so far. It's kind of a similar feeling when I first got season tickets in 2017 and saw how Adia Barnes' team played. I was like, okay, well, I think something good is brewing here. And that team, we only won 6 games that year total, and I thought this team is going somewhere, and I feel the same way about this. This team is going someplace. You know, I think once we get a new caliber of player in, and we'll get to that in a second, that leads into a lot of what's going to happen, I think, in the conference. All right, leaders on the court. Well, obviously, Noelani Cornfield, the fifth-year senior that came with coach from Buffalo. So much fun to watch her thread the needle with her passes. She has a very much so an intensity, but she has a verbal leadership, which we've lacked, I think, sometimes in the past when we had players that were more of just a leader by example. Noelani does a lot of stuff on the court for us, getting steals, getting rebounds at a smaller size, and really getting her teammates into positions to score. So good things there. And of course, who's the player on the court? Obviously, we've got Michaela Purdue, who steps onto the court ready to shoot as soon as she touches the ball, which, not going to lie, I love that. This is, my mentality as well. And at the level of competition, so the level of competition, when we first went to some of the games, my friend said, we're kind of like a really nice D2 school. Based on our overall power rankings, depending on whose systems you use, 168 out of 300 and some odd teams, like the middle of the country, feels like it could be a nice D2 school, right? And we've played a lot of lower end Division I teams so far in our non-conference. I think it was important to do. Having wins under your belt is good. I don't know how we're going to deal with losses once we get into the conference schedule. That's a mental thing to see what happens with the kids when they get into the conference schedule and see how that turns out. Overall, really, I think that our level of play is very good. I think it's just that thing that you can't teach size and you can't teach athleticism. It's one of the reasons why I think you kind of always have to keep either Cam Kitchen or Tanyelle Welch on the court to give you a little bit more length and athleticism as you're figuring out the rotation. I think that's important for us just because as we get into conference play, we're going to have more teams that have more height and more athleticism than we have seen. Now, we did see a few teams that had some really good athleticism and height. I mean, New Mexico and Southern, both of our losses. I thought Eastern Kentucky was a really well put together team. And that UC Irvine team actually that we played, both the UC schools were actually pretty good size and athletic, but not like we're going to see once we get into said Big 12 conference, which of course has 16 teams in it. Once again, as a resident Pac-12 fan. All right, enough of that. So What is it going to look like once we into the conference schedule coming up here? We start with Utah straight off the bat on the 22nd of December, a home game. I'm super sad I will actually not be there for that game. And then we go to Colorado and we go to Texas Tech, then BYU at home. So that gets us into the first week of January. And so the schedule's all over the place. I don't have it on the calendar. I'd love to map this out a little better. Central Florida at home on the 10th of January. TCU at TCU on the 17th. Kansas here on the 20th. Iowa State on the 24th. Everyone's circling that date. I think that's a Sunday. At that's at Iowa State. My bad. Then at ASU on the 28th of January. We move into February. We're playing Oklahoma State at home, Kansas State at home. That's the 1st and the 2nd. And then on the 7th, at West Virginia. So that's kind of a rough, this beginning of February schedule is rough. At Cincinnati on the 10th. So that is a interesting 10-day span. And then we come back home, Valentine's Day, ASU at home. Don't you love that? And then we're going to play Colorado at home on the 17th, Baylor, February 21st at Baylor. Houston at home on the 24th. We round out the schedule, full cycle, playing Utah again on the 28th of February. Here we go. So, that's it. So we play 18 games. We play Utah twice, Colorado twice, and ASU twice. Everybody else we play one time. So the top half of this schedule is the top half of the conference is really crazy tough. I think it's kind of easy to recognize the top half of the conference and the bottom half from what I can tell. Right, top half you've got TCU, Baylor, Iowa State. I think that's kind of like the top three teams. And then the bottom, it's going to be us with Cincinnati and Houston, right? So after that, it gets really fuzzy. Well, we also have, I think Central Florida, like we're the bottom four. Top four gets tricky because you have an undefeated ASU, an undefeated Texas Tech. How good are they? Both of them have pretty good ratings based on win-loss, but I still want to say that ASU is a paper tiger because I'm from Arizona, the U of A. That's why I would say that, right? And then, but Texas Tech looks to me like they've got a legitimately good team for a team that's 13-0 and not ranked anywhere. They looked like they're pretty good. Then you get into that middle of the conference, the rest of the middle of the conference with like a Kansas, a West Virginia. How good are those teams going to end up being? I think Colorado falls in the bottom third of the conference, if you will, if we're going to move things into thirds. Them and Kansas State. And I feel like all those teams that are kind of in the bottom third are winnable games for us. Whether or not we're going to win them is another question. So I get pretty optimistic really quickly when it comes to my Arizona women's basketball. So I might not always be a realist. So once again, I'm going to force myself back down to negative Nelly, reality person. When it comes to these 18 games we're going to play in conference, I'm gonna call it like 6-12 is a success for us based on what I've seen so far. I think our biggest problem right now is we're not going to be able to stop people very well on defense based on what I've seen. We don't have backside help. Our posts aren't big enough or numerous enough to do that, really. We really have a hard time with a good pick and roll. And on top of everything else, the conference is really good. I think the conference win percentage is the second highest in the country right now. And who knows, I know a lot of people are playing smaller schools like we did, but also they're crushing them. But we've had good wins. We've had 20-point wins against teams that when I first watched the U of A play, we would have struggled to win or beat some of these teams. So I think it'll be really good if we can get Blessing Adebayo back up and running. I think she needs to spend some time on the court. We need someone who can come in with some backside help a little bit And even it's tough with Achol Magat because she is, of course, not as quick, but she's big. And I don't know how many times we're really going to need her on the court other than against Iowa State, just to be a big body against Cooks. I'm going to say her name wrong every time. It's not always on purpose. I don't know. There's some type of mental thing going on there. So, Iowa State. Iowa State famously, our last year's point guard, Jada Williams, is now playing for them and having the highest success she's had with assists. But then again, when you're throwing it to somebody who basically scores every time she touches the ball, it helps. It really doesn't hurt much. The big question mark, of course, so on defense, I'm not too positive about what we can do against especially the top two-thirds of the bracket here, top two-thirds of the conference. Offensively, the question is, okay, someone's going to have to score. Do we have someone who can score? Yes. Is she going to be able to score and lead us every single game? That's the big question mark. Of course, every game is too much to ask for anyone. We've already seen Michaela Purdue have 1-for-9 performances, things like that. That will happen again. And it's just extremely helpful when you have someone who can shoot 50% from the court, hitting threes, making layups, taking tough shots that go in, making free throws. Also on the other end though, she's kind of a defensive liability versus her offensive skill set, right? There's a big difference between those two things, but coach needs her on the court. Our two ball handlers on this team are the two smallest kids on the court, Samaya Sangapong and Noelani Cornfield. Also, that causes problems unless you have the speed of Aari McDonald, which neither of them do. And Cornfield can move, don't get me wrong, but Aari was like next level. So if you're going to be a 5'3" to 5'5" guard, you've got to be able to really have either such a high skill set that you can maneuver around people, or you have to have that speed, that quickness, not top speed necessarily, but what they call twitch, where you're just like, boom, let's go. So I think 6-12, getting us to like a 17-ish win season would be good. How the kids will handle it, I don't know. You had some early success with some players, and then now if they're, as coaches, change the rotation completely in the first, what is this, 13 games of the season, you're seeing some kids react differently to being benched, I think. I don't know for sure yet. Maybe someone had a bad day, but you see how they act differently when they're not starting. And that is something that is a maturity issue that hopefully people will overcome over time. Because you don't want kids to have the mentality that if I don't start, I'm not going to play well, or I don't have really, positive energy on the court, so to speak. All right, so Utah coming up right away. And, of course, I'm going to unhappily miss this game. But, I will watch a recap and try to figure out. I'll have some eyes on the court for me to see what that looks like. As far as what we're going to do, who's going to win the conference, that is, I think, something that I still think Iowa State has the most dominant player on the court in a position that's hard to stop. TCU, so currently at the time of the preseason ending here, you have the ranked teams in the conference are nationally TCU at 9, Iowa State at 10, and we've got Baylor at 15. And it's hard for me to think that we will beat any of those three teams when we play them. Once after that, I think you've got that kind of combination of West Virginia, Kansas, BYU, Texas Tech. And if we can steal a game from one of those teams, once again, I hate to think that ASU is actually in that group, but apparently, some computers say that they are. And that leaves us games against Arizona State and that Colorado. Utah and Colorado are both probably better teams than us right now, but those are winnable games, I think. And then you've got that Central Florida, Houston, Kansas State, and Cincinnati. Now, here's the thing. There's four teams there that I think are very beatable, but also we can lose to them, right? So it's not like I can just put them down as automatic wins for the team. So you guys can tell me what your predictions are overall for the Big 12 16-team, 18-game conference schedule, and we can all laugh together about how it turns out. But the big thing here still is get to the game, support the kids. They're doing the best they can with the system that we've got, where you've got a completely new set of coaching staff, completely new set of kids, and who knows how it'll actually turn out. But be there at the McHale Center for the kids and support them. Bear down, and we will see you next time.